Imagine you're walking down the road in a foreign country, and all of a sudden someone comes up and snatches away your purse. How would you react? You might telephone the police, you might run after them and try to get your purse back, you might harbor anger against them in your heart forever. But I can tell you the one thing you're not going to do. You're not going to watch them scamper away and say, what strange cultural differences there are between here and the place that I live. No, you're going to be mad because you've just been wronged. And that is the proof that you already believe in absolute morality. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Hard Questions with Elena. Today we are continuing in our little Absolutes mini-series with part 2, and we're going to be tackling the question of, is there absolute morality? If you haven't seen the first video that we posted in this series on absolute truth, I would encourage you to go back and watch that one before watching this one. We're going to start in the exact same place that we did in the last video by coming up with a formal definition of the thing that we ultimately want to prove. But before we do that, I have some disclaimers. As normal, I derived some of these arguments from other smarter people, whose names for this video are C.S. Lewis, Norman Geisler, and Frank Turek. So with that, let's move on to the video. So what is morality? Or the natural law, or the law of human behavior, or the moral law? They're all different words that just mean the same thing. Basically, it's what distinguishes between right and wrong. It's what allows us to judge between good and evil. So if we stick the word absolute in the front of it, we now have a standard that distinguishes right and wrong for all people, in all cultures at all times. It makes morality applicable to everyone. So, as we learned in our last video, when something's absolute, it means it negates its opposite. So there's really only two conclusions we could come to at the end of this video. Either there is absolute morality or there is not. There is an absolute standard or there is not. So let's jump into it. Let's look at the belief that there is no absolute morality. I have to argue that no one actually believes this, and here's why. You can test what we believe based on our reactions, not our actions. I might say that I believe in moral relativism, but when you take my purse and run, you better believe that I'm going to react like they're absolute morals. You see, this view has some scary implications in the real world. If there is no such thing as absolute right and wrong, then I should be able to punch the moral relativist just because I don't agree with his opinion. If that's the way that I feel, that's not the way I feel, mind you. But let's look at some other implications of moral relativism. Take two of the most famous historical people, Mother Teresa and Hitler. The first saved thousands of people's lives, while the second destroyed them. If there is no absolute morality, then I cannot make a distinction between the two. I cannot say that what Mother Teresa did was right and noble and just, and while what Hitler did was horrible and evil. I cannot say that their actions were morally different. They were the same because they were both carrying out what they felt they should do. Or think about the example of 9/11. We are all outraged that bin Laden would kill innocent people in the attacks. But that's because we believe it's morally wrong to kill innocent people. We're holding bin Laden to a universal standard. What even allows us to define innocent person if we don't have some notion of what merits innocence? Another way to prove there's absolute morality is to look at why we make excuses. All little children at some point in their life have made an excuse for why they hit Billy on the playground. We want to be able to pass the blame off someplace else. It's not our responsibility. But all little children do want to take responsibility when they hold the door open for a nice old lady or help someone. You see, since infancy, we are ingrained with a sense of what we ought and ought not to do. And somehow we feel very uncomfortable when we know we have broken this standard of perfection. Now, others have come up with counters for this argument, and I want to take a look at them because they're actually really intelligent. I've heard it said that there cannot be absolute morality because morals appear to have changed throughout history. Take, for example, the witch hunts of the 1700s. Back then, people used to believe that it was morally right to murder witches because they believed that witches could kill people through their powers. Now, we have rejected this notion and we say that it is morally wrong to kill witches. So what accounts for the change? Well, the change was not actually a change in morals, but a change in the perception of facts. You see, both cultures agree that murder is wrong. But back then, they used to believe that witches could kill people through their powers, and now we do not. Once their beliefs were corrected, their practices were also adjusted, and our morals actually turned out to be the same. The same argument could be applied to different cultures. It really looks like the different cultures in our world have very different morals. Take, for example, the Hindus in India. They believe that it is morally wrong to eat cow because they believe in the belief of reincarnation and that their deceased relatives could be living in those cows. Now, here in America, we too believe it is wrong to eat deceased relatives. However, most of us don't hold the beliefs of reincarnation, and so we feel no shame in eating cow. You see, the difference is not the moral, but it's the facts that the culture believes that affect their actions. Now, I've also heard it argued that there is no absolute morality. We know what is right and wrong because of what's inconvenient to us. Someone kills my mom, that is inconvenient to me, therefore I judge that as evil. But the problem is this argument doesn't hold up in the larger context. Sometimes what is evil is actually less inconvenient than what is good. How do I know that it is more right and noble to go off to war and to sacrifice my life for the sake of my country than to stay home while my fellow men are fighting for freedom? You see, sometimes I pick what is inconvenient because it is good. And that's because I have an absolute moral standard living inside of me. The final two arguments we're going to look at are really good. What about disagreement? How can there be moral absolutes when we can't even agree on what they are? Take the abortion controversy for instance. We've been arguing for the past 100 years over whether it is morally permissible to terminate a pregnancy or whether it's murder. But you see, the fact that we can't agree does not negate the existence of morals. Actually, it proves them. See, if there is no absolute morality, then who cares? If we violate an innocent woman, if we kill an innocent child, it's all morally the same. It's all morally permissible. You see, the fact that we take stands on these controversial issues proves that there must be absolutes. The last counter we're going to look at is the existence of evil. How can there be such a great moral absolute standard if our world is so full of evil, as I'm sure you've noticed? Well, just because there is a standard doesn't mean that everyone adheres to it. In the same way that measuring a crooked line by a straight line does not make the crooked line straight, it simply gives us an accurate perspective to measure the crooked line by. How do I know what is evil unless I have some idea of what is good? How can I say that it is evil to murder your mom unless I have some idea of what type of behavior you ought to exhibit towards your mother? So we've come to that point in the video, like we did in our last one, where we have to ask the question, if the moral law does exist, then where does it come from? The theory of evolution would teach that we all evolved with our own sense of morality. Our behaviors are simply the result of our biological makeup, of chemical reactions within our brain. There are two problems with this theory. The first is that science has not proven that natural selection can generate new life forms, let alone morality. More on that in a future video if you'd like. And secondly, if this view were true, then morality would not be absolute. It would be subjective, individualized for the person. And we've just proven that there must be an absolute standard. If this were true, then a child abductor would simply be carrying out the results of a chemical reaction within his brain. He could not be held accountable for his actions. No, this video is going to follow the same conclusion as the last one, saying that because there is a moral law, there must be a moral lawgiver. The only logical conclusion I can see for this is a God. Something outside of ourselves and our universe by which we judge what is good and bad. Well guys, that pretty much wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped you discover more about morality and truth. If you did like it, I would really encourage you to go back and watch my previous video about absolute truth. It's very similar, has very similar arguments, and I really hope that you guys like that one as well. Please remember as well that you guys can write me an email. I'm always really excited to get you guys' mail. My email address is hardquestions.withelaina@gmail.com. I want to hear what you're wondering about related to God, religion, science, all of the above. Please email me. I love to hear from you, and I might feature your questions in one of my future videos. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Have a wonderful day. See you guys. Bye.